I dreamed all night about my first steps in being an Alexandrian witch because we've had it on our mind and we've been talking about it. And I went back, I've gone back in my mind and my memory to see myself in the first temple and the first experiences. And marvel today, knowing all I know now, I marvel at how much is going on in that magic circle. When you first start, you've got, like I said, I talked about before, I have some anxiety and some nervousness, and you're memorizing what you want to be doing, and you're trying to learn all the steps and watch everything so that you can take it in. But as a psychic already, a professional psychic, medium, and strong visual and auditory psychic, I was experiencing so many other things that I was dumbfounded, honestly, right in the beginning. I thought, "This is extremely complex. This is not just memorizing and standing in the right spot and facing the right direction. There's so much going on." And my perception of the quarter lords and the gods were so powerful right from the beginning. And I won't say that I didn't work with these beings previously. I did, and I knew who they were, not necessarily the specific deity ideas in Alexandrian craft, but a lot of god forms, and certainly the quarter lords from my studies and work in Servants of the Light school. So, but they were so powerful and it was so complicated and big energy and full of activity in these realms that it was just hard to take it all in, and it was so complicated. Now I look back and I think, "Okay, I really got a lot more experience with this." But I wanted to start by asking you about going back in our minds to our first few times back in the circle after our initiation, when we had this complex web of things going on energetically, magically, the power from the gods, the psychic experiences, the magic we were choosing to work. What did you make of it when you really first were seeing the complexity of the circle?
I'm a perfectionist. So naturally, I wanted to be on top of everything. I wanted to know every single word by heart. I wanted to control every single aspect of the circle. Aesthetics. I really actually trained as an actor, as you know, and I wanted to control the circle as I controlled a theater production. And very quickly, I learned that that's silly. You can't do that because the craft is it's really a flow of currents that you cannot control. Really, you can live it, you can experiencing it, but you can't really control it. And of course, we all want to do the Sabbaths very neatly, and we want to have all of those flowers and all of those things in the altar and all of the symbols, the right colors. But then you really very quickly learn that it doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that you go with an open heart and you really go in with that will to participate and that eagerness to experience the power and how things will develop and the surprise, because there will be surprises either you wanted it or not. Again, that lesson, always expect the unexpected. It's always there, and I really feel that it's a very important lesson. But I think that in the beginning I did experience it as I wanted to control everything. I wanted to be, and it's not because I wanted to necessarily controlling the way in a bad way. I wanted to be the best. Everything has to be in the right place. Everything, it's very theater like. So I really treat it as what I knew, right? What I knew. And it was the environment of a theater production. Everything had to be very beautiful. Everything had to be, and that actually really served me well because you do want to have that purview on all of the things that you have there in the circle. But it's not theater, you see, so you can't really do that. It's very interesting because there is a parallel between theater and the rites of witchcraft because it's actually coming from a ritual. Theater in the beginning coming out of the rites of Dionysus. And that tells you about the nature of all of this and how it's connected. But you can't really control it the way that reminds me when the philosophers would just ad lib and they would come up. Reminds me also the hermetics that we do today, for instance. It's a current. You navigate this river of energy and this current that you have to go through, and every time is different. So I've learned that lesson very quickly.
The porter lords, the gods, and sometimes angel beings, we've learned in our tradition that we can work with angel beings. I always thought they were real beings. I never aspired to the or ascribed to the idea that they only lived in your psyche or they're part of your psychological complex and we just projected them out. I believe they are real entities. And it proved itself to be true in my circle experiences when the quarter lords behaved in certain ways and the gods behaved in certain ways. And you could tell whether we were really interacting with them in an authentic way or when we were not. And I felt like sometimes we were shut down or the energy flattened or we kept making a lot of mistakes or something went wrong in the physical. Things got knocked over, candles wouldn't light, that should have had water in them were empty. And we're standing there like, why don't we why don't we have any water in our water bowl? And then immediately sort of checking in to see what's going on with the other beings that are here. I also perceived often old witches with me in the circle, and not my ancestors, but just previous witches that were part of the teachers on the inner planes and that they were there. And sometimes people connected to a coven member, I would see, especially if they'd had someone pass recently or something big energetic in their life, an emotional big thing. I would sort of see something around them. And then it just really opened my mind to the fact that it wasn't just about the humans doing the thing in the room, that it was really bigger than that. And it was much more, well, out of our control. We could learn the things correctly and have the control over that ourselves, our memory, our outfit, our earrings are on, or our magic ring is on the right finger. We could control that, but we couldn't control all the other energy and the gods and the quarter lords. I mean, I wouldn't want to control a god, honestly. I want them to like me. I want them to see my work and I want them to choose to come help me and be with me and work with me. And that's why I like worship because that's what they like. And when you worship and give attention to them and praise them, then they're happier to come to you and help you with your things. But that's what I'm talking about with this big energy experience, so many things going on at once where because I don't say I'm quite OCD, but I'm a pretty strong functioning person where I definitely wanna get myself right and have my own stuff together and be high performing. And then I just was really blown away by how little control you end up having and how much something else takes over. The power of the tradition, the power of the ancientness, I think, of witchcraft, the other beings that are there.
I like a good taskmaster. Good master is delightful because you just relax and you know that they're going to take care of all of the things that are needed.
Mhm.
But I've learned that as well very um, early. Uh, The people that consider to ponder about the nature of the gods, are they part of our psyche? Are they part of our mind? Are they really something that it's a formation of a thought form? It has to do with the experience of them. Real experience of Godhead or divinity is really very palpable. And you know that you're experiencing something really not of this world. So it's when you're touched by them, you know this. And you know this immediately. And it's very good because you will have times when they actually don't show up. You feel these things. You feel when they're not or they are. I never experience not being there. At some degree, they will always there. Sometimes they were a little bit more strong in their presence, and but they were always there. They were always there when we called them. I know of other people that have been through experiences where there's nothing. there's nothing for a period of time or just no response. For instance, I had an experience that was very interesting. Um, and it was very shamanic, and some people actually have talked to me about this, and they think they think they're of the opinion that what we do is actually modern shamanism coming from the British Isles and United Kingdom, and that this is really something that has to be treated as such, which is a shamanic experience of having the gods coming into us, into our bodies, and let them speak. But there is a tendency to look at this in a little bit more simpler way, which is, oh yes, you do have this whole thing, but you're inspired by them. They don't really go into you. They just approach, and then you will speak. It's a different experience. Of course, it is. It's not. We're not in a ritual where the Godhead just goes into you and then you just fall on the floor and then you begin to speak a different language. It is certainly shamanic because it has all of the hallmarks of shamanism, really, and communication through shamanism. Did a ritual many years ago in the wild where a very big group of witches called the god. And I was the priest that would be being invoked upon. And the experience that I had was we talked about this, not remembering things. I saw myself, so I know that I came out of it. I was completely naked. I had horns on me, so I just hid behind a bush and put those horns on, like in my dressing room of sorts in the forest. And I remember to put that on, and then I remember that I had an oil that I had prepared to oil myself with it, so that I could be oiled for that particular occasion. Specific oil made and prepared for the occasion. After I put the oil in and I begin to hear the witches calling for the gods, I don't remember a thing. I had flashes of stuff. So this is very interesting because afterwards I talked to some of the witches that were there, and they told me incredible things that the god spoke to them and said this and that he put the hand on their chest and said this and that, and I had no memory of any of this at all. So I think this has all of the hallmarks of sort of almost like a possession of body, that you have flashes of it. And I remember I didn't lost control. There was like this tiny little fading image of all of the things that happened, but very, very thin. And I remembered some of the flashes. I remembered a face, or I remembered a hand, or I remembered. So for me, the gods are very, very real. This is not something in your mind, or and I think that we need to understand this if we want to really have a dialogue with them, that is meaningful and really produce any kind of. And then, of course, magic comes out of this. Magic comes out of this contact, of this really profound contact and very tangible contact with divinity. And if you do have the opportunity to do this, you will know that this is very different from living room. So go out and run naked in the woods. See what happens.
I wanna go back to the idea of the gods. I worked with different god forms all my life from being a little kid. They just showed up, and then I could read and look them up and say, "Oh, this must be so and so, or this is so and so." And I definitely trended with the Egyptian gods, then the Greek and Roman, and some older Germanic and English gods that are a little bit more obscure, I think. I realized that later, but probably just because that's my genetics and because my mother's both her parents are from Scotland. Those old Scottish gods, I think, are part of my retinue. I already worked with these different beings, and I was sort of talking to them about how we're gonna integrate the Alexandrian gods, because we have a female and a male, a primary being, and they were just like, "You'll see it when you see it, don't stress out about it. You'll see how we mesh and how we work together," and we all know each other because 'cause we're all kind of in the same rag. So, and I think this is true. I think most of the Temple of the Mother Alexandrians that I've met do kind of hold a Kabbalistic philosophy where we believe in Ein Sof coming to Keter, which is the source of life. It's the one unified field of energy that then chooses to operate the lightning flash to create the multitude of forms that create the material universe. And so in that process, we get Hokmah and Bina, the primal male polarity and the primal female polarity as the first two things coming out of the source. And so there's the theory that all goddesses are really one goddess and all gods are really one god, and that all gods and goddesses are one divine source. So I like that philosophy. I'm a Kabbalistic thinker myself, but I love the diversity of the god and the goddess forms, and I do think they show up at certain times of year in different ways. Sometimes I'm just working outside and a deity will show up and I'll recognize it and have a conversation and take some flowers for it and make some gestures because I appreciate that it saw me and paid attention to me. I think the gods would be here even if humans were not. That's one of the things I've thought about a lot. I think early people thought the planets were gods, and the planet is a symbol in a lot of ways of a god. Venus, Jupiter, Mars, I mean, they're have god names. So I really, had to do a lot of work personally to pattern in the Alexandrian deities with the big world of gods that I was already working with and living with, and it added something to it for me. I had to reorganize it. I just was always struggling with the connection with these specific deity names. I felt like this is sort of a tarot card so that you could enter and have the relationship with the multitude of gods or goddesses that could be in those places on the altar or in the mind on the altar. And it took me a while to come to that, really. It took me a while to build the stronger friendships and the familiarity with the god names and seeing how they show up. It is shamanic. I think it is. I always considered witchcraft shamanism, or a sister or brother to shamanism. And it's just a different culture, European as opposed to maybe Russian, which I think is where we get the word shaman. But that it's a real interaction, a living relationship, and often an indwelling. You have the body, it doesn't, so it's going to come in and speak and move and express love and give energy. I mean, I often was the goddess and actually did healings, spontaneous healings, correcting emotional problems, Akashic record repair, in circle for members just because she was there and she wants to help the coven members be whole, be well, be healed. And that's just one thing I do anyway. So it was, I think, probably natural, but those are times when it's just you just have to do it and go with it. The goddess is gonna decide what's gonna be going on, and in your case, in the woods, behind your dressing room bush, you were able to create the availability of yourself. You were able to have the symbols and the oil, which brought your senses to the recognition of the god, allowing space for the god, and then he came in and did his work through your body.
We have the tendency in the beginning to think that the gods are separate from us, where in fact they're not. The moment that we understand this, and it's not really understanding the gods, but it's really understanding your relationship with them, your proximity to them, and understanding that is unveiling every single time, because you're not. This is a relationship and an unveiling that is going on and on and on until you really pass through the veil and say, "Oh, hi," in a more direct way.
They're my best friends, and I feel that we're in a mutual relationship of growth and learning and change. They also, not just me as a human, but them also. Think about how old they are and how much they've learned and grown and seen. They're probably watching us all down here now in the United States thinking we're nuts, and we probably are. Don't you think it is an ongoing growth relationship, not just for us, but for them and the relationship?
One of the questions that I get a lot from people that are not initiates is, what gods do you work with? And this is something that comes up again and again and again. It is true. We work with specific deity forms. It really is very specific to us. But it is a divine feminine and divine masculine. Some might equate it to Diana and Apollo. But what I really think that people miss is to label. Let's label this god and this goddess because they think that the power comes from the gods directly, which is really a view of a separatism view of the gods, because that implies that they are external to you, that they're outside of you. When the fact is that they are very close to you, and all of the power comes from the relationship that you develop with them and how you worship them. So it's really something that really people don't understand. So it doesn't matter what you call them. Really, it really what really we have to rely on, and we often do, is to develop this relationship of worshiping, which is really very interesting in our tradition by itself. But it is this particular piece that it's really the mystery, isn't it? How we relate to them, how do we experience them, and this is what makes that power come out. So it really is. It doesn't matter which one it is. It really doesn't, and what we call them. What really is important is the relationship we develop with them with time.
And they change and come in as you set up for a ritual and you're very specific. We're going to do this and we're going to work with these god forms. And then all kinds of other stuff happens. And you're like, well, no, we're going to go this way now. And we're going to be doing this a little differently. We talk about the Sabbats as the wheel of the year. It's the position of the earth around the sun. It's a certain timing. There's certain things going on in the northern or southern hemisphere, and you're really trying to observe the connectivity of Earth to the solar system, us to the Earth, the individual human. Where are we? What are we doing? How are we developing? How has our year been? What's going on in our material world? And I think that's a very fluctuating time too with the gods because they are in their own wheel. Well, they are the wheel, and they are outside and inside of us. We're part of nature, so certainly we are participating fully with that, with the gods, which I think are also part of nature or our nature, and we really get separated because we use our thinking brain too much. Instead of our living body, we use our observational brain, which I said already I struggled with as an observation person. That's one thing really fabulous that Alexandrian witchcraft, coven witchcraft helped me with, was to get out of my observation and to get into the lived time of the ritual and the working and the experience with the gods and the quarter lords and the angels in certain cases, and not just to really feel it, to experience it in my own body.
That is the main thing. It's the experience of it, which is, and we think we're humans, and humans are very silly. We have the tendency to be very silly, and we have the tendency to be really kind of like, okay, I'm going to control this, and I'm going to do this Sabbath today, and I'm going to be in control of everything. Where in fact, you just need to navigate that current. Just let the Sabbath happen. You know, stop controlling everything. And of course, people say, well, no, 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 no. In the Sabbath, you need to do this and this and this and this, and this cannot happen. This cannot happen. Well, that's very arrogant, isn't it? I mean, really, because you can't control the tides of the gods. You can't really. You can experience it, and hopefully you are coming with an open heart to experience that power. But really control it? It's kind of arrogant, I think. I was very arrogant in the beginning because I wanted everything to be perfect, to actually go well and have all of the things that should I would check like 5 times. Is there the water isn't and all of the details and the flowers and this and that. And then, of course, very quickly, I understood that, oh, you think that you're going to have a Sabbath? How cute. Let's just move those plans into something else. And then, of course, things happen. You have to let the magic happen. If you don't, then you're blocking it. You're actually being
Mm.
silly. So you have to just navigate that current and you're jumping into a current of power. And of course, like a river, it doesn't stop. You have to navigate, otherwise you will drown. And when you drown, you just kill the magic. That's all. It's really very difficult for people to understand this. Sabbats are done, and we do Sabbats because we want to experience the power and the mysteries. But we're so obsessed with form that we don't. We don't. We rarely actually understand or experience mysteries because we're so obsessed with form. The craft needs to be a little bit more spontaneous, enough with all of this controlling thing, and we have to do all of this, and we have to repeat it exactly like it really isn't that way. It doesn't work that way too well. And I'm speaking out of my own experience because I was a control freak for many years because I wanted to replicate the theater into it, and it's not possible. It really isn't.
I think of the craft as being incredibly old and will be preserved long into the future, and the individual people will be forgotten. It's not about the people. I mean, it's about the lived experience while you're doing it, absolutely. But, I do think we have so many unnamed witches, right? I think witches were around forever. I think they were a natural type of human, and I've been criticized for this philosophy, but I believe it, or I think it now. I think it now. That there's natural witches, born witches that have a real vocation, that their body is already wired to experience that kind of power. They're much more psychic people. They can handle the energies. They're more naturally shamanistic. And then you have the other kind of person who wants to be a witch because the aesthetic, or they like the ideas of it, or the look of it, or they want that alternate religious religion, and they're just as flat as a pancake with energy. They have no psychic ability. They don't have any current in their own body. They can do all the show up in all the right things and have the most beautiful temple, and then you get in there with them and you're like, "Oh no, this is going to be so horrible. Boring and static, and in fact, a big block. It's like having a concrete boulder in the middle of your temple where everyone's got to walk around it because it can't flow." I remember, I mean, so clearly, there was a couple of young women in my first coven who were sort of branded as difficult because they were really loose emotionally. But one of them in particular was ADHD. So she always had on the wrong color and the wrong stuff, and she's late and she forgets what we're doing, and she doesn't show up with what she said, whatever, because we all have assignments, right? Next week we're doing this, and each person's going to bring this. And but this woman, when she worked the altar, that room changed so much. That goddess came down into her so fast and was so incredibly powerful, and her words flowed and her energy, it was unbelievable to see, and I loved it working with her that way because it, even though she was a little goofy on the outside, I loved her in circle, and she got criticized a lot and complained about, not by me, because she was unusual to handle. But I just thought, "What a natural," and she was so drawn to it, she didn't even know why. Well, she had a similar story to me. She said when a little kid, there was this man in black standing at the foot of her bed, kind of beckoning like, "Hey, you need to come with me. We've gotta go to the woods." And it's scary when you're little, but later you realize it's one of the god forms, and they're calling you back to your coven because you were in one before.
That's right.
And she's so gifted. I mean, I don't see her now, but she's so gifted, and I really want to say to people, that's more important. That real flow, that real energy, that real body of energy that can move and flow and navigate the river than the power of your personality, your structure, what you've memorized, what you bring to the table. If that flow and that energy weren't there, witchcraft wouldn't be here today. Nobody would do it. It would become too boring and meaningless.
It is important to understand that it's very weird, strange, that people think that there's only one kind of witch. There's only one possibility that somebody can be a witch. Witchcraft has been in human history for centuries and centuries, for millennia. And natural witches are a thing. They are. Should they be initiated? Well, if they wanted to, yes, absolutely. But that doesn't really change anything because they will come with their own ability and their own potential that they had accumulated probably for lifetimes. So to have to reference Joe Gardner when he came to this group in this Rosicrucian theater and they said, you have to return to us. Why don't you return to us? And that's the whole thing that this conversation is the whole thing that all of this happened. It really is very telling, isn't it? Because that acknowledges that we were witches before. So formalizing something and calling ourselves witches, there are many people who are not initiated and they have more magic in their little pinky than somebody that has been initiated in all the degrees and have all of these other orders and degrees in other things that are absolutely still dead in terms of magic. And it's just so revealing. I have some people have no interest in witchcraft whatsoever, and they're absolutely amazing in generating power, just
And magic.
in yeah, and magic. So when you have those people that are what we call it goofy, or they're not that conscious, right? Those are the ones who get a very clear focus and conscious magic. It's very interesting to watch. Yes, I have also experienced that before. People get a little impatient with them because they're not very disciplined sometimes, and they're a little bit rebel in terms of what they ask and wonderful things that they ask. I think it's really wonderful, and then they're not actually taking it. They're asking you, giving the answer, and they say, "Well, that's not right," and it's it's okay if they don't agree with you because they might know more than you do. It's not because you're a high priest of something that you know more than this person, that it's a first degree that had probably many more millennia on this than you do. And sometimes this is what happens. And I've learned that lesson as well. I thought that this person had the first degree. And suddenly I've realized, well, no, that person actually have listen to everyone and listen carefully because you might learn something.
I always feel like the old witches recognize each other too right away.
Yes, I do too. I do too.
But I think what's interesting too is there are, because of the current social media and technology of online, I started studying and reading before the internet came out. So I had to use books and letters and meet people in person. It was very hard to get anywhere in the occult because it just wasn't accessible like it is today. So because of that, we have all these people involved now that I think are just book witches or paper doll witches. They have the trappings, they have the knowledge, they have the degree, but they really, this is, I think, maybe their first time being a witch in a lifetime. And you can just see. I mean, God bless them. I want them to start and I want them to go their true way and be authentic, whatever that is. I'm not saying I'm judging that, but I think they're really missing and they don't know because the flat pancake witches don't know they're not magical because they don't have the capacity to see that yet. I'd rather be in a room with the old natural witches that are goofy any day than the new fake paper doll witches that think they've got it all right and have control over it that are flat because I'm there for the energy. I'm there for the joy. I want the really big experiences. I mean, my life is pretty busy and full. I don't need to do all this work in the Alexandrian tradition for flat pancake rituals where I sit there for hours thinking and I can't wait to get home so I can actually do something worthwhile myself. So I get it. I mean, I'm there for the energy. It sounds snobby. I'll be coming across as snobby, and I sure don't mean to be, and I don't want to offend anyone. Absolutely, but I want the experience of that incredible otherworldly event. The ability to move from this dimension to another dimension, function with the gods, work with the gods, live with them, elevate out of just the mundane into this magical energy field You can see it. You can see it, the light sparkle all over the universe. You feel the connectivity of us and the gods. There's so many other beings, all the elementals, all the star beings, all the ancestors. We're all still here. We're all in this cosmos together, and it's just incredibly fascinating to make that journey out of the body, out of the mundane, into the magical. And I do think the ritual in the temple holds space for that. It gives a structure to turn it on and turn it off. Because if you lived that way all day long, you'd be in probably a lot of car wrecks. You wouldn't you wouldn't have your clothes on right side in, you know? You'd really be strange. But it is a good mechanism, I think, for kind of turning it on and off because we have to function in the material world. So we can't be in split dimensions all the time. But I sure do want that in ritual. I want that big experience where the walls drop away and we're out in the starry heavens or we're in the ancient woods and we're with the gods and we're seeing and doing and knowing magically and psychically. I want those experiences and I want them to be very potent. I feel like my magic's much better that way. It achieves its goal quickly and strongly. You're in sync, you feel in sync, you wake up in the morning strong, clear, focused, happy, excited about your day. And you know the alignment is there because your energy field is so healthy and good. And it's not about really control. I think it's about alignment and the inner work, a tremendous amount of inner work each of us do that are really committed to the craft as our religious practice to become the vehicle for it, to become the vessel for it, to be able to hold the energy and function with it, share it, use it to heal humanity and the earth and to help others. I mean, to me, that's the primary goal. Improve yourself, help the world.
There's nothing like good, powerful magic.